Hello game developers, and welcome to the first part of the Space Shooter game tutorial series. So the first thing we need to do is I've provided you some game assets. So you're going to come to the Unit 4 Space Shooter game, and you can go ahead and you can play Galaga, which is a little bit of our inspiration here for the classic Space Shooter. You're then going to want to go to the Space Shooter assets.zip folder, and you'll want to right click on that zip file and save link as, and you'll want to download it to your desktop. Okay, once it's on your desktop, you'll then want to find it on your desktop. So here it is. I'll double click it and that will open it up. You can then go ahead and delete your zip file. Okay, so I'm going to create a new folder and call it Space Shooter Demo, and I'll open up all of the assets, select them and grab them and place them inside there. This step you don't have to do, but it's just for organization and for the tutorial. So you'll see that what we have here is we have our alien graphic, we have a sound effect, another sound effect, we have our laser shot, we have our player, and we have a space background. Okay, so now that we have our assets, we're going to go ahead and open up Stencil, and we're going to go ahead and create a brand new game. So let's click to create a brand new game. Now this part is really important. It's asking you how do you want to start the game, based on what, and we're going to choose a blank game, not the Crash Course kit. We'll say next, and we'll go ahead and give it a name. Now if you want to come up with a different name, you're more than welcome to. Let's keep the dimensions the same and hit create. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to start by loading up our cast. So we're going to go to actor types, and we're going to create the player ship. And we'll go ahead and load the image. Make sure that your scale is set to 1x, that way there's no resizing, it's just normal default size. I'm going to navigate to my desktop and then navigate to my project folder and bring in the player ship. Now it's real important that you see that there are 4 frames of this animation where the fire is moving. So you have to come over here to columns and make sure you input 4. Now we see that there are lines dividing them up, and so Stencil will then go ahead and show you the animation. Something to remember, right here for the animation, you want to get in the habit of calling your animation, your first animation, default. Now if you had another animation like thrust forward or left or right, you would call it that, but for the default animation, you're going to want to get in the habit of that. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and take care of the physics and the properties in a little bit. We're going to bring in our other actors here. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and create another actor, and this is going to be enemy. Again, your names could be a little bit different, but they should basically mean the same thing. Alright, so I'll bring in the enemy. The enemy has no animation, so I don't need to do anything there. I'll click on add, and then the only thing I need to do is change this to default. There we go. Go ahead and save my game. And the third and final actor for right now is the laser. Now this one's a little confusing at first, but there are a total of 3 columns. You can see it is a double blast. So there we go, 3 columns. Okay, and change it to default, and again you can see it animating right there. Okay, good. So now we're going to go back to our player ship, and we're going to go through physics and properties right now. So it's a normal actor, it cannot rotate, and it is not affected by gravity. And the reason why we don't want it affected by gravity is we're in outer space, but we're also, we don't want anything falling down to the bottom of the screen. I'll go to the enemy, physics, no rotate, no gravity, and laser, no rotate, no gravity. Okay, Now I'm going to go and take care of the properties and the property groups. So I'm going to immediately go into the player ship and choose edit groups. And I'm going to create two new groups. So I'll create enemies. These are the bad guys, of course. And I'm going to go ahead and create one called projectiles. And projectiles is going to be, I could call this good projectiles or player projectiles. This is going to be for the player lasers. Later on, when we get a little bit more advanced, we'll create an enemy projectiles. So I'll go ahead and call it player projectiles just so it's really clear. Let me actually spell the word properly. There we go, so player projectiles. Okay, so that is it. All right, so now I need to go through and make sure that my collision settings are correct. So there are no tiles in this game. I could just leave that there, that's fine. So the players should interact or collide with enemies. The enemies should collide with players and player projectiles. And the player projectiles should just collide with enemies. Okay, so go ahead and hit save. Okay, so that is pretty much it for the actors. Our cast is loaded. So the last thing I'm going to do for this part one is I'm going to create a background. So I'll go to add background and I'll call this one stars. And I'll add a frame, choose an image, choose my background, and hit add. Okay, so I want to give it a vertical scroll and I want it to move downward, so I'll choose down. And for the scroll speed, I'm not quite sure what I want, so maybe I'll choose just 2 and see what that looks like. And now to input the background, I need to create a scene. So I'll create a scene. I'll simply call this level 1. And I'm going to leave all the dimensions the same, and the color doesn't matter because the stars background is going to cover it up in just a moment. So I have my first layer here in the bottom right hand corner. I'm going to come down here and click on add new background layer, and I'm going to choose the stars, and it pops up there. It shouldn't be on top of the other layer though. So I'm going to click on the stars layer and click on the little downward arrow there. Alright, I'm going to go ahead and save my game. And I'm going to go ahead and select my first layer, and I'm going to go ahead and double click and call this actors, just so it's really clear. Select my actors layer and I'll go ahead and place my player ship right there. And I'm going to go ahead and do a quick play test so that way you guys can see the background moving. And throughout this whole series, when I do a play test, I'm going to pause the recording so you don't have to see everything loading, and then I'll resume the recording once it's in play mode. Okay, so there you go. You can see that my background is moving, but I did not tell it to repeat. So you see that there's a ugly kind of white screen going on there. So easy to fix. I'll just come back to my stars background and say, yes, I want you to repeat. So simple little thing, happens to the best of us. Okay, last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add in sounds, and then I'll end this and get into part 2. Okay, so I'm going to go to the dashboard, sounds. And the first one I'm going to bring in is explosion. And you need to make sure that it's either marked as a sound effect or music. So explosion is a sound effect, import MP3, and explosion. Okay, so you might not be able to hear the sound as I'm recording it, but it did play just fine. I'm going to go ahead and make a new one. And this is going to be called Level 1 Soundtrack. And the reason why I'm calling it that is because I might want to create a level 2 and I might want to have a different soundtrack for that. So I'm going to switch it to music now since it's a longer sound effect, and I'll choose the sound. Okay, and even though you probably can't hear it because of my recording software, it is playing correctly, so you just have to trust me on that. Okay, and the very last thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add in that soundtrack music. So the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to go to my level 1 tab. I'm going to go to events for coding. I'm going to say add event, basics, and I'm going to say when creating. And that basically means when the game starts. So I'm going to double click and change the name of the event And just try to be pretty specific in your names. Don't write a whole paragraph, but just be specific. And I'm going to come over here to the right and choose Play Sounds. Bring it over here, snap it, choose my sound, and that should be it. And there we go. And I can go ahead and test it. I've already tested this, and so I know it works. So you'll just have to trust me. All right, so I'm going to make this part 1, call it complete, and I'll see you in the next part 2, where we actually start to make our actor ship move. So I'll see you in part 2.